Ruth, and I am a woman of Christmas. Don't you just love a love story? Perhaps you've heard of mine. My story ends with the love of a noble man, but it begins with the love of a much different kind. A love not at all romantic, but altogether remarkable. It begins with a family and a famine. An Israelite couple, Elimelech and Naomi, along with their two sons, Chilion and Mahlon, fled Bethlehem to the land of Moab to escape the scarcity. Life in Moab would be a mix of joy and tragedy. Naomi would welcome two Moabite women as wives for her sons. Chilion would choose Orpah, and Mahlon would choose me. But over the years, all of our hearts would break as we tragically lost these men that we loved. It was devastating. And Naomi, who had always faithfully trusted her God, even in hardship, turned cold and bitter toward him. This shattered my broken heart even more because, you see, Naomi had not only shared her love for us, she had shared the love of her God with us. The one true, faithful God, Yahweh. The God I would also take as my own. But now, no husbands, no children, no laws to protect us, no future. In Naomi's mind, no hope. In a tailspin of fear and grief, she decided to go back to Bethlehem, back to her home, back to her people. She didn't want us to go with us. She told us to stay, and Orpah did, but I couldn't. I wouldn't. She was my family. Where she would go, I would go. Where she would live, I would live. Her people, my people. And her God, forever, my God too. When we arrived in Bethlehem, the best way I know how to describe us was empty. Both figuratively in our hearts, but also literally in our stomachs. We had no food, no means, but I was not going to let us starve. I knew that we had arrived in Bethlehem at the beginning of the barley harvest, and I knew that I could go into the fields and gather up the fallen grain behind the harvesters. This was an old Levitical law, you see, set up for the poor by God who always provides. So, poor in spirit and poor in means, I found a field. It was across that field that I first saw him. Boaz was his name, I would later find out. He was a prominent man, one of noble character. And unbeknownst to me, he was also a relative of my late father-in-law, Elimelech. He saw me across that field too, and he asked his harvesters who I was. That's the Moabitess, they said, the one that returned with Ruth. I didn't know Boaz, but he did know me. He knew my story, and he knew of our great need. He came to me in that field, me, an undeserving foreigner with nothing to offer, and he told me I could stay in his field, that I could continue to gather the grain behind his female servants. I was overwhelmed by this man and every word that he said. I was overcome by his generosity, but more than anything, I was completely undone by the Lord's provision. When I brought home 26 quarts of barley, Naomi was overwhelmed too, with shock. "Where did you get this?" she asked. "Who found favor on you?" "In a field of a man named Boaz," I said, and I will never forget the look on her face. Boaz was known to Naomi. She knew he was a close relative. She knew that he was one of our family redeemers. And it was in that moment that I saw something that I had not even realized how much I had missed. A smile on Naomi's face. I would later learn what was behind that smile, an understanding of what a true miracle it was that I had stumbled into Boaz's field. The realization that the Lord had provided in ways we could not have imagined. When Elimelech and Naomi left Bethlehem, they sold all of their land. And now, returning as a widow, Naomi had nothing, no way to buy back that land. but a family redeemer could. And as the magnitude of what this could mean for our family was starting to settle in, the understanding of how God was intertwining my heart to Boaz left me with a mix of joy and peace. Boaz allowing me to gather grain in his field that day was just the beginning of the role that he would play in our lives, in my life. I told you, it was a love story. Boaz was a man of noble character, and that was never more seen than when he did buy back our land. Because in buying back our land, he also took me as his wife. He was kind to me in the field, the most lowly, but it was God's kindness that wove our path, our story, our love together. Boaz owed me nothing, but he gave me everything. He gave me security, a covering, a home. He gave me love. He gave me redemption. Boaz was God's provision to me, but it was through our love that he provided for all. Boaz would later give me a son that would continue the bloodline of Jesus. And through that, he would show that the one true, faithful God could be trusted, that he was going to provide provision, provide redemption for us all. My name is Ruth. I'm a woman of Christmas, standing in the lineage of grace.
Please stand as we sing Silent Night.